Hi, welcome to the TA Tech Talk podcast. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I'm going to be the person who's the subject, which feels a bit disconcerting, but we'll give it a go. We do have a little catchphrase when we intro. It's the when tech meets conversation. So let's have a conversation.
Let's
go
for it.
We Phil and I work together. Phil's one of the maybe introduce yourself, Phil, so I don't get it completely wrong. What you do and who you are.
I am Phil Burney. I'm the Associate Director of Strategy and Transformation. Quite a long business card.
Yeah.
I started off as a trainer, but now I work more strategically with some of our bigger clients like groups of schools, multi-academy trusts, ministries of education, helping them have a strategy for the use of technology to support education, but also business as well.
Yeah. Well, that's Phil. Me and Phil were talking a few weeks back about the podcast, and I've always wanted to have a chat with Phil because Phil's job's super interesting. He's got a bunch of experience across many Microsoft kind of world, really, haven't you? But then you thought maybe it'd be nice to have a chat about me.
That's it. I mean, why not be on the other end of the mic, so to speak?
Yeah. So I think because I'm kind of new to, I wouldn't say education or technology, but I'm new to kind of the world that you kind of live in. And although the TA Tech Tips is separate to what we do as a business, we also kind of there is kind of links there. So.
Oh yeah, plenty.
Yeah. So we thought we'd kind of get my history of why I did why am I doing tech tips really. So Phil's going to kind of take over today. Phil's going to be the person doing all the talking, doing the interviewing, and so we'll see how it goes. And yeah, sorry if I'm not as exciting as the other people that I've talked to in the past. But
well, it's exciting for me to be able to chat to you, Nick, because I've seen it grow your TikTok channel from starting it off to now. What do you got? 2.1 million?
2.2 million at the minute. I mean, we're not too far away from 2.3. It's just it is crazy.
Tomorrow.
Hopefully.
By the time you watch this, there'll be even more, I'm sure.
That's it. Well, that's it. I'm trying to do some longer form content, hence to doing this, doing the podcasts. It's been a bit of a slow burner, really, just because of time, and we were all super busy at our company, TA. But yeah, tech tips. It's crazy how it's kind of taken off the way it has done. I think it's nearly be 3 years or so in November. I think it will be maybe even longer. But yeah, it has been crazy, really crazy.
So it's on quite a few different platforms, but you started off on TikTok, and that's where you got the most subscribers or followers.
Yeah, so TikTok was the so I kind of maybe I should go back to why it started on.
Yeah. How did it develop on TikTok then?
Yeah, so I think my day-to-day job is marketing at TA. And we were looking at different ways we can kind of utilize TikTok or marketing and try different avenues of, promoting the company. So initially it was just to kind of get our name out there. And I was really reluctant to join TikTok because you get the stereotype of the dancing girls and kind of all these trends.
You can dance too, though, right?
I've got some moves. Not that TikTok's ever seen them, but
maybe that's a future one.
Maybe that's the 3 million mark. I do a dance, but
okay.
But no, I saw some chap do an Excel spreadsheet tip about something, and he had like 500,000 views, and I thought, wow, that's not necessarily easy, but I thought, well, I could do something like that. So initially, the idea was to do some more computer-based tips, and I thought, well, let's just try it, and it kind of went from there, really.
When was this then? Around lockdown times?
Yeah, so it was probably mid first lockdown of COVID. So a lot of it was kind of me doing it here just with the camera, and then I did it at home because we were all working from home for a while. And it was just something to try, really. And then it kind of just developed into its own thing rather than it be something that was linked to our day-to-day business. Because obviously with your role and all that, all the consultants that work within TA have all got so much experience within Microsoft and computers and all that kind of thing. And me working in marketing, I don't necessarily have as much experience as you guys within the world of Microsoft and using Excel and Word and that kind of thing. But there's a knowledge base that I had that I thought, well, I could show people those kind of tips, and that's kind of how it began. Just a bit of a gimmick almost, just to try, say, oh, let's try it, and yeah, then it's just gone on from there.
So you started with sort of Microsoft Office and Windows tips. And how did you record then back in the original days?
So it was just me with my phone, just pointing at myself, holding the phone in a space that was quiet. Selfie style, yeah. And just, at first, even to this day, I don't like recording in front of people as such because I still feel a bit embarrassed by it. So I would try and find a little nook somewhere in the office just to get the camera and hold it. And, you look at my early TikToks. I mean, we've all got to start somewhere, but you look back and they're so kind of boring and dry. But you develop and you get your own little style. And as things progressed, I've got a little area where I've got a better light setup and a bit more professional looking. But it was just on the fly, yeah. Just if I saw a tip that I thought, oh, that would gravitate quite well. And some of the early tips were, how to change the case in Word, how to do uppercase, lowercase shortcuts, and how to do quick underlines. It was just really simple things like that people, because everybody really uses Word and has a laptop, and I think one of the mistakes that I kind of assumed early on was that just because everyone has a laptop and everyone uses Microsoft or Word or Excel or whatever it might be, that they know how to use it. So I think that's why it kind of took off fairly well, especially with lockdown, because people were using their laptops at home and having to do and fend for themselves. So I think probably, the timing was quite good. And then obviously we'll talk about it a bit later, but it's developed to a lot of Android things and other products. But bread and butter wise, it was all Microsoft products and laptops and Windows stuff.
So I guess the question all the fans want to know is, well, how did you go from starting off with a few Microsoft Office and Windows tips to sort of becoming so successful? You mentioned how you sort of felt it was a little bit awkward with the original setup, but now you've got millions of followers. What is it that continued that journey and managed to make it so successful then?
I think it was just consistency, really, and I think it started to get better when the quality of the recording and my confidence within presenting the tips got better. I think the more you do, it's like anything in life, isn't it? The more you do something, the more you practice, the more you become comfortable with doing something. Because I've never really been one for, my background, I've done bits of radio and I've done bits of stuff where I've, been in front of cameras maybe, but not to the point where I've been the main focus. So I think getting a confidence and showing, not being afraid to be that person in front of a camera. And I think they took me a while to kind of do that. Again, like I just said earlier, I still feel a bit embarrassed doing it in front of people. But I think that's when it started to grow, when it became apparent that I knew what I was talking about, I think. And I think some of the tips that we share on the tech tips are tips that everyone can do. I think that's the point, really. I think it got successful when everyone realised that it's not an expert. I'm not an expert, if that makes sense. I mean, as much as, I that's the...
You know what you're talking about, but you can relate to people that...
Yeah.
At a similar level, can't you?
Yeah, exactly. It's all accessible. Everyone can do what I show them. It's not as if, you need to be a computer expert to do the certain tip. You haven't got to be a computer engineer to do the tips I do. It's something that everyone can do. And I think that's why it's been successful, because everyone can do what I show. And it's always in around 40 seconds. So I think historically people will go onto YouTube and look for a 5-minute video, whereas now things do change and people want a lot of information quickly. I think that's probably why it's been work quite well, because it's just a real quick 40-second tip that it's easily digestible. You can save it in a little folder or like it and then come back to it. So I think that's probably why it's grown the way it has, because it's easy.
But it's also down to the fact, the sort of content people would like. So how do you work out what sort of things to show on or demonstrate on the channel?
It tends to be stuff, because some of the comments that I get a lot, especially with the Android tips, is like, how do you know this? I think I'm not afraid to look, just kind of mess with my phone or mess with a computer and see what that does. And I've always been quite curious about how things work. And it's like when I listen to a song, I always have to kind of figure out what it means, or what the lyrics are. And I think that curiosity is kind of translates to the tech world and my phone. So I'll mess with the settings and I'll have a look and not be afraid to kind of get it wrong. Yeah.
One comment I've heard from somebody was like, oh, I didn't know that I didn't know that. So you're finding sort of interesting stuff that appeals to people, and they can use it straight away. I guess that's one of the key things you're saying, but they're probably curious like yourself. You got people like want to know things and, oh, didn't even know that feature exists.
Yeah, exactly that. So I think, that what you said there, you didn't know it. So early on, the kind of hook would be things you didn't know you could do on an Android. So people might know them, but they might not. So I think one of the comments I get quite a lot is, it's a negative comment, but it's a comment that kind of falls into a way where it helps the views, where people say, can't believe people didn't know you could do that. Whereas everyone's got to start from somewhere. So just because I found that you know it doesn't mean that everyone else knows it. So I think that's where it works quite well, that, it's easy tips that everyone's got a phone, so everyone, especially with the Android tips, that they might know it, but they might not. So I think you've got to be not afraid to. I've not been afraid to just do a basic tip that you take for granted that everyone would know.
So you're sort of presenting yourself more like the average consumer, so to speak, and because people relate to that, then they like it and tell others and other things.
I think that's it. I think I'll tend to do tips that would interest me. I think the minute I start deviating from things that interest me, and I've done things in the past where I've had some collaborations where maybe not necessarily I'd use that product as often as I would like, and I think people can see through that. So at the minute you kind of step away from something that you're not really that interested in, or if I do a tip that I think's not that good, then I don't think that people will find it that good either. So I think the tips that I do, I find interesting, and I think and then hopefully other people will find those interesting and helpful. So I think if it's not something that I would want to watch, then I wouldn't record it, I think.
So I guess the keys you've said so far to your success, firstly, having content that's relatable and interesting. You've got in a format that's engaging. But just having good content, you've got to be able to get it out there to people. So how do you engage with your audience and get more people attracted to following your SEO tips?
I think a lot of it is the hook, and to leave people wanting more. And you can use a lot of techniques to follow me for more tips and all that kind of stuff. But I think I try not to. I let it all go organically. Really, you see a lot of creators who you have to follow them to get more content, or you have to like to see part 2. But I try not to do that as much. I think I want people to kind of have it easily accessible and kind of almost throwaway. So I'm comfortable with people seeing a tip and then maybe not returning, but they know that I'm here if they need to come back and think, oh, I know that TA Tech Tips guy. Well, he might have an answer there. But I think having a good intro, a good content, and a good, not necessarily controversial element to it, but sometimes if you put an opinion based tip, people will comment on it because they think they might know better, which they might do, which is absolutely fine, but that also helps engagement. So you also have to think about, is it a tip that people can comment on? Because that, you got to think about, I mean, the TikTok algorithm is a minefield. People don't really know how it all kind of works, but so you can try techniques where you get people to share it, or you get people to comment what their opinion is, because everyone thinks they might know better, which is absolutely fine, and I've got no problem with that. But that's helped people commenting on something that they, again, like I said earlier, oh, I can't believe people didn't know that. That helps because that gets the comments up, and that gets more people seeing the tips, and then that kind of all falls hand in hand with gaining followers.
And you've leveraged the sort of tribalism that exists between the Android followers and the iPhone followers. I
really play on that. I mean, it's all tongue in cheek. So I do a bunch of posts, and I, take the mick out of Apple a lot. But I've got no problem with Apple and the people who use the products, the iPhones, great phones and great people. But yeah, that helps with getting that community to kind of have a bit of banter with each other. So yeah, there is a very big. You either in one camp or other. It's like Marmite. You either love Apple or you hate Apple. And I've had Apple devices, and I'm an Android guy. Always have been, I'd say. But yeah, that content helps with getting people to kind of interact with each other. I mean, I love it when you see people on the platform, on the comments, kind of having a conversation with each other as well, because I think that it makes me laugh really, especially with the Android and the Apple, the iPhone argument. But no, that kind of thing helps with getting people to talk amongst themselves. Yeah.
So we've talked about relevant content. We've talked about ways that you engage with your followers and trying to comment and be provocative in some of the sort of presentation that you use. What about the style with which you present? Because you've mentioned you're not trying to be one of the dancing TikTokers, but how do you find your own style and rhythm that people like? What is it that you do to sort of make that content exciting?
Yeah, like I said earlier, so if you go back to my earlier tips, it was just me being quite meek and shy as TikTok tech tips. It's quite cringeworthy, but you got to start somewhere. But now I think it's hard to say what style I've got. I think it's just I've almost developed a catchphrase of easy peasy at the end. So because it is, all the tips are easy, I think. But no, it's hard to define my style. I think it's just showing a confidence of what I'm presenting really, and showing that I'm confident in myself and the tip that I'm producing. But I think I get a lot of comments about my setup and about, what camera you're using, but it's always, I use a good vlogging camera as it happens, but having a good lighting setup, that's helped me develop my style and be more confident in myself. Having, it's like, again, when I used to play football, if I had good football boots or, I felt comfortable, I'd feel confident in myself to play better. And I think that kind of works a little bit with the presenting style in TikTok. If I feel like it looks good, I feel like I can, I don't know if that makes any sense really, but yeah. I feel a bit more confident. But
you're also quite excited. I mean, to be honest, I'm a tech lover myself, but the content you're presenting is not, the most enthralling to talk about. But you are making it exciting. You're presenting with enthusiasm and zest, and that's what I guess people relate to as well. Like,
yeah.
Wow, check out this thing that I found out or want to share with you, which is also part of it, not just having good content, but the way it comes across. Yeah. Would you say that as well?
Yeah, definitely. I think, if you look at black and white, it's boring, isn't it, really? Showing a tip how you can get a diagnostics menu on your phone. It's not exciting, but yeah, I think you're right. I think, did you know you could do this? Like, do you know there's a hidden menu on your Android? People are like, really, is there? And people want to find out because you are presenting that in a hook of, you've got to find this out. You've got to know, if you don't know this, you need to know. So I think that's where I have developed. I think I have been better at getting people to watch for longer. I think that is important. Getting that enthusiasm on the video. I think people do quite like that style I've got, and like I say, I have got more confident with the way I'm presenting and the way I produce the videos, and I keep it kind of no frills really. I don't do anything too complicated, especially with edit because I'm not an expert editor, so I just use a basic editor tool. So the more basic I can make it, the better it digests for people. I think that's been the key to the success, really.
So, I mean, you've had great success with your TikTok channel. Let's try and sort of summarize then 5 tips that you would give to people if they were looking at taking what you've done and trying to replicate it in their own setup. So you mentioned about simplifying the content. Was it 40 seconds that you try and bring things down to?
Yeah, I try and keep it short and easy digestible, and keep into the same kind of content. So I've seen other content creators who started doing text tips, and then a few months later they're going on to do movie reviews or something like that, which is absolutely fine if that works their content. But I found that I've kept it consistent and keep it short and concise. Consistency and being short and concise is something that I've kind of tried to kind of lead on with. Again, like I said earlier, it's something that if I think it's going to be interesting and I want to listen to that tip, I think that's what other people will feel the same. So I think keeping it consistent and short and sharp, I think. Again, I do a variety of different tips. Sometimes they're longer, depending on the product. But if it's just an Android tip that, people want to find out quickly. TikTok, people's attention span with TikTok, you got the TikTok generation who just want a quick swipe and quick 30-second, even less than that. So I try and bear that in mind with when I'm recording a video, is just how quickly can I get to the tip, but also include something that makes them stay to the end. So it can be tricky, but it's something that it becomes an instinct as you go, really. So that's probably the first major thing. Just keep it consistent. Keep content the same, so people know that you are that person.
I know what to expect.
Yeah, exactly that.
And then you mentioned having a decent quality setup, but not sort of overpriced, but so it looks good.
Yeah. So again, people, especially when I do a TikTok live, I tend to show my setup because I think people do get the impression that I've got these big fancy lights, but I bought a cheap ring light from Amazon. I've got some recycled lamps. I've got, one of these from, cheap shop from where we are. You don't have to spend a lot of money on a good setup at all. From I'd love a lovely studio. I see a lot of
one day, mate.
Yeah, one day. I see. I've got a bunch of creators that I follow, like someone like Parker Burton and a few other people who have a really cool setup. They've just got they've got their own studio now, which is amazing. And I haven't got that, and I would love that. But you don't need. For me, I don't need to do that at the moment because I've just got a ring light, and if it looks like it's a good quality setup, that's that's kind of secondary to the tip almost. It helps because it looks more professional. Again, look at my early tips; they look really grainy because the lighting isn't very good. And I think it does help that you have a better setup, but you don't need to spend a lot of money on it. Just have a good light, and and phones these days. Most phones that people record on are all good phones, really. I mean, most cameras are fairly decent, so you can record on your phone. In the early days, I would record on my old phone, an S10, a Samsung, and it did the job. It got people following me, so. Again, I think content is key. If you're producing good content, people will want to come back regardless of how it really looks. It just helps having a nice light, I think.
So make it look good. And then also you mentioned about having a hook to intrigue people from the start.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said earlier, just did you know you could do this? And they'll want to know, well, did I know I could do that? And it kind of get people to watch it thinking, because I almost sometimes want people to know they know it. Then people will watch it and think, well, I knew that, and then they'll comment saying, oh, I did know that. But then also you get the comments, people saying, oh, I didn't know that. So it kind of works both ways. So that's the hook, I think. Just getting people to want to find out what you're going to show, because it's something that everyone can watch, especially with the tips, like we said earlier. People have all got phones, have all got technology these days, and they want to be the expert themselves. I want to know more about the phone. So if I see other people doing tips, even if I know it, I'll want to watch anyway to see, how they kind of view it as well. So I think having that initial, did you know you could do this, is the hook that I kind of tend to lead on from, and it seems to work.
So I guess related to having a good hook, you also engage with the audience. You mentioned you sort of a bit more provocative in the tribalism, or you talk in the comments, and that probably helps inform other videos, does it as well?
Yeah, it's really funny actually, because early on, so one technique, and it wasn't a technique, one thing I did early on sometimes was I'd have a bit of a caption above my head to say what, things you can do on a Samsung or whatever it might be. And sometimes I'd put a spelling mistake in there on purpose. Just a little mistake, and people would say, you spelled that wrong. And that would get people commenting. So yeah, it's little things like that. And again, I think it helps when people, so I get a lot of comments about the way I pronounce certain words. So I'll do a lot of tips about privacy. And in other countries, they call it privacy.
Oh, yes.
So people will comment saying,
accents. I know about that one.
Yeah, exactly that. Yeah. So people will, privacy, it's not privacy, it's privacy, or, whatever it might be. I've said it wrong. And I get that a lot. Or like router. I did it too, but we call it router in this country, but other countries call it router, which is, I've got no problem with it being called something different in that country or whatever it might be. But I get a lot of people having a go at me for the way I've said things. And I'm absolutely fine with that. And another comment I get loads, I've got lookalikes across the board because I've got no hair and I've got a bit of stubble. Anyone who's bald and the beard, I look like. So I get a lot of comments saying Eric Ten Hag, Man United manager, or there's a guy called Johnny Sins who is an adult actor, I say, in adult films. So yeah, that kind of thing helps, having people kind of take the mickey out of me a little bit. And I think so one of the other things I think as well is having a thick skin. I mean, I think we might talk about that later on, but yeah, so you got to kind of be prepared for kind of people having their own opinion and not agreeing with yours. I found as well. But yeah, I think engaging with like I said earlier, I try and engage as much as I can with people. But it can be overwhelming, especially with I probably get 100 messages, private messages a day, and I can't really respond to everyone because I've got a day-to-day job as well. I work as well as TikTok. It's not my full-time job.
Yet.
Yeah, well, that's it. So yeah, that's another tip. Yeah, just engaging and getting people to kind of to have their own, express their own opinion. Maybe it's fine. That helps the views. I'm all for that, really.
So, following on from what you've just said, there are obviously some challenges trying to run a TikTok channel. What are some of the challenges that you face trying to keep it going, so to speak?
I'm constantly scared that I'm going to run out of tips. I'm constantly fearful of that. I mean, I'm in a position now where I get a lot of people come to me, companies asking me to promote your product, and I find that a challenge in itself because, as much as, I'm very fortunate that I get a lot of tech sent to me, it's picking and choosing the right content, really, because I don't want to be a sellout. You know what I mean? I don't want to just take it just because I'm getting something free from it, or getting, I'm, again, fortunate I get paid collaborations where, company, I have an agency that look after some of my products and some of my features, like the Gold Studios. They come and present me with a company might want to do a TikTok on an AI product. And it's important for me not to just take anything on. I think that's a challenge. It is deviating away from me being passionate about something. I think people will see through. People ask me to do a tip on some Windows. So I have comments saying, "Can you show us how to do something on a computer?" And I don't really know how to do it. I'm not going to do it because I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on something that I'm not.
That'll be authentic.
Yeah, I think people will see through it. So that's a challenge, is just coming up with content constantly that that you don't want to deviate from what you do day to day just to get views or just to make videos just for the sake of it. That's a challenge. And then again, like I said earlier, dealing with negativity. I mean, I'm fortunate that the only kind of criticism I get is if people think they can do it a better way or they don't agree with it being the best way. I don't get too much trolling that people get with the way I look or the way I am, apart from my lookalikes, and they're always decent lookalikes. I'm not going to argue with that. I mean, I don't get too many people saying I look like Voldemort anymore, so that's not too bad. But yeah, having a bit of a thick skin, that's a challenge in itself, because I think I did a tip once and I had loads of comments, negative comments, and it really bothered me. But then I thought, well, I don't know these people and they don't really know me. I'm not going to, not that I'm not worried about what they think of me, but I'm not going to let it affect me too much. So I think it kind of keeping that separate it can be hard, but then it's something you've got to kind of deal with. People are always going to have an opinion, whether you like it or not, or whether it's a good opinion or a negative opinion. So having a thick skin can be important, depending on the content you're making.
And resilience, I guess, as well, because have you ever had it where you've made that's an amazing tip, and then no one really engages with it?
That happens frequently, yeah. That happens more often than not. You think, this is going to do well, this tip. This will fly. I mean, I've got a good following now where I'll always get a fairly good amount of views or engagement because I've got a good following. But at the same time, you think, well, why didn't that tip do very well? But again, it can come down to the algorithm of TikTok. So you can repeat that tip 2 months later, recycle that tip, and it could do really well. So I think that's it. Not be afraid to fail. I think that's something that I've kind of learned to do as well. Just keep consistent and not worry that people give up after. I think that I was watching a podcast about social media, and I think people said that you need to do a minimum of 50 TikToks before you start taking off. I mean, I was fortunate where it kind of was a bit quicker for me, but I think not giving up too soon is something that people need to kind of be aware of. That just because you won't get a viral post, I think, and again, I see a lot of people saying, here's 5 tips to go viral or grow your followers. You need to do this, you need to do that. You don't need to do any of that, really. You just need to produce good content. You can take one TikTok and do well from it. So it's I'm just contradicting myself saying you do 50, but then one will take it. But it's it just not be afraid to fail, I think, is a challenge for some people, because people want to instantly do well on it. I mean, I've got family young nephews who do TikToks, and they think, I've only had 10 views on that, I'm not going to bother anymore. But just keep going. I think that's what I've done. Just kept going.
So you mentioned that you haven't really got a technical background. So what is your background, and how did you develop into where you are now?
Yeah, I've done all sorts, really. So I did film and media studies at university.
That would have helped then, I guess.
Yeah, so it was a film theory. It wasn't necessarily film making. So I didn't go off and use cameras and that kind of stuff. It was a theory of film. So I did that, and then I got the chance to go and live in your homeland in Australia.
Oh yeah.
Well, actually,
Aussie, yeah.
Oh yeah, that's it. So, but actually, going back before that, it was America. So I spent a bit of time in America doing football coaching. So I spent a little bit of time doing football coaching, getting some experience traveling there.
That's where you learnt what a router is.
That's it. Yeah. Well, it's funny with that because people call it Route 66, but call it a route, but saying it's a route. So I always have that argument. But that's another
TikTok.
That's another TikTok. So yeah, and then I got into what else did I do? Then I did some work in radio. I was working in Australia, and then I got a call saying that there's an opportunity to come and work in radio, and that was doing promotions for a radio station, almost marketing, which is kind of what I do now. But then I got friendly with the one of the presenters, and I volunteered to go and work on the show with him, and then I ended up working on the drive time show, being a broadcast assistant for a while, and then I kind of fleeted between jobs for a little while after the radio, because I left there, and then I worked for a agency who do videos and marketing for websites and build websites, and then this job came up at TA. So I've never really had a specific niche that I've stuck to. I've kind of always got just tried different things and try to find what I like, and I've kind of at that point now in my age where I'm comfortable and I'm happy and content and settled. I think that's where I am now, I think.
Is there anything from your background that has helped you specifically to do what you do today?
I think lots has helped me. I think I've gained quite a lot of life experience and not being again, like me and my friend, we moved to Australia. We bought a one-way ticket to go out off there. We offered to offer some coaching and to play for a team out there, and it didn't work out when we got there. So after 12 weeks, we had a one-way ticket. We had no money, and then we had to kind of make something work. We couldn't just fly home because we had one-way ticket. And I think having those kind of experiences, and I went to America by myself when I was 18, and I think being resilient and not being afraid to fail, I think that's what I've always kind of done. I've always put myself forward for things and not been afraid to kind of ask questions or not being afraid to put myself out there. And I think that's kind of how it's worked well with TikTok. I've not been afraid to just to do it and have a go on TikTok. And I mean, I feel like I'm a bit old. I feel like sometimes I'm too old to do TikTok, or especially when I first started. It's a young person's game. But that again, if I had that thought and I didn't do it, then I wouldn't have kind of created what's the TA Tech Tips, and it wouldn't have been what it is. So I think, yeah, and not being afraid to fail is something that I've kind of taken from my history of my employment and life, and not being afraid to do things out of my comfort zone. And TikTok was definitely out of my comfort zone when I first started. It wasn't something that I think, if you'd have asked my family or my friends, 2 or 3 years ago, would I have this following on TikTok, they'd have probably laughed and said, of course not. And social media wasn't really I looked on Twitter, I looked a bit on Instagram, but having the TikTok channel with me as the face of it, nah, not in a million years. But I think having that kind of history of just going off and doing things just to try it has really kind of put me in good stead for where the tech tips are now, I think.
So what are the benefits then of running TikTok channel for the company that you work for then? So you've had some confidence that's developed in yourself, but how has TA given you that opportunity, and how does that help with the wider work that TA does?
Yeah, so I've been really lucky with our CEO Mark. He's kind of give me just complete freedom to kind of develop it as I see fit. Really, I think a lot of companies might be a lot more kind of precious over the marketing aspects of their company. And again, like I said earlier, it's become its own business really. So it's become we're trying to keep we want to make financial benefits from it, and I think that we're getting to the point now where we've grown it to a point where we can we can see the fruits of our labor. And I think from a company point of view, if it wasn't for the freedom that I was given just to kind of take it and run with it and become my own thing, it probably wouldn't be what it is really. I think there'd be a lot more kind of restraints on it, kind of micromanagement with it. But I think I'm lucky that TA itself has just let me kind of develop it and take it to where it is now. I think some people probably think, what's he doing back there in that room? So I've got a little nook that I go and off and record. And I'm sure some of the people that I worked with initially, back when it first started, you think, well, he's just going there, just having a jolly, sticking in front of a camera, looking on TikTok. And I think a lot of companies might be thinking, what is he doing? Is he wasting time? I think having that freedom just to kind of express myself within the TikTok world, especially from a TA point of view, that's really helped me. That's really helped that I've not felt there's been restraints and I can't do something. So that's been a big help, especially from an employee, because I am an employee of TA. Although like I said, TA Tech Tips has become its own thing, and I get to run that and have the freedom to do kind of what I want with it. And I think having that freedom to do that has really been really beneficial for sure.
But in many ways, the way you come across and what you do is embodying the values of TA anyway. So you deliver engaging content, which is what we try and do. You simplify complex ideas down to things that are easily understood, but also making it accessible to people and relevant. And they're all things that we try and do in a whole range of other content as well, whether it's student enrichment workshops through to training of teachers, through to engaging with executives about their digital strategy. So I think although it's separate and focuses on a different market, perhaps it's actually embodying the company values that we all try and show in our day-to-day training consultants.
I think so. I think that's how it was that's how it started really. You guys, like you just said, that you go off and you do a lot of training and you do consultancy and you do how to use Teams in a professional setting or education. And I think, yeah, it kind of does come hand in hand. I'm just doing a microcosm version of what you guys do on a day-to-day basis, really. I'm doing something that's accessible on a different kind of level, really, on a different way, sorry. So yeah, it does, it's not too different to what we do as a company, for sure. It's teaching people how to use technology, and that's what we do as a business. So that's why it's been quite, that's why it's developed quite easily, and quite, that's why the company has helped nurture it, because it isn't different to what we do. If I was sitting here doing tips on cooking, then it wouldn't be anywhere near, it wouldn't be what the business is. So yeah, I think that has helped, the fact that it does kind of come hand in hand with what we do as a core business at TA, for sure.
So it's been a really helpful summary of how you've got to where you are, some tips about what's made TA Tech Tips successful and how that's supported you and the business.
Yeah.
What's next then?
I want to continue growing the numbers on TikTok. I want to, keep reaching new levels of followers and content views, and keep improving the tips. But I also want to do more of these. I want to do more podcasts. I want to talk to more interesting people and kind of get their take on things, and do some longer form content. I've got a good follower on TikTok, but not necessarily on YouTube and Instagram, because you never know what the future holds with TikTok. There's always these talks and rumors that companies and that countries are going to try and ban it. So you just don't know what happens. So I've got to kind of future-proof the account a little bit. But as I said earlier, we have a company that work with me to bring in some business. I want to keep developing those relationships, and I'm fortunate now where I get invited to places. So I'm going to the new launch of the Samsung devices next week in London, and kind of I'd like to go to more events and get my face out there within the tech world. Maybe not just always hide behind the camera. That'd be quite interesting. I get a bit jealous seeing other creators. I get to go to Tokyo and Korea just to go to a launch or something. I love to be in that position. I mean, it's difficult being in the UK. I think a lot of the business is over in America and that kind of stuff. But also, I'm happy with the way things are going. Really, I like, it's like I say, it's not a full-time job. If it got to the point where it was, great. But I'm not precious if it doesn't, because again, the content and the things that I create are working. So I don't feel like I need to change anything. But again, I've got to keep up with the way things work in the social media world. Things might, longer form content might be the key in the next 6 months. So I've got to look ahead, but at the same time, I take each day as it comes.
The platform itself is evolving too. Have you been adapting to sort of new features that get added to TikTok and things like that?
Yeah, I don't really. I mean, initially, so when I first started, again going back to the kind of how I first started, to kind of, I would use the trending sounds. I would use the some of the trending hashtags. But now I don't do any of that. I just do what is consistent for what works for me. So I don't really kind of deviate from just recording on my camera, editing it, and putting it out with a few hashtags. So I don't feel like I need to do that as such, especially with the content that I'm making. I'm not doing things to go viral. I do things to kind of to appease my followers almost. So I don't feel like I'm in that position where I need to be, checking out every feature. But at the same time, TikTok now, you can do 9-minute videos on there. So, and there's a thing called the creator fund within TikTok. So it's just changed. So you get paid per view. It's like very minimal money. Absolutely. It's like 0.4p per 1,000 views or something like that. But now to be qualified for that, you have to do over 1-minute videos. Now, I'm not saying that I'm going to start doing that, but again, you've got to consider that with what TikTok offer. And then another aspect of that is the TikTok shop. So I've been trying to do more things on the TikTok shop because it helps with bringing in commission and financially. But again, like I said earlier, I don't want to sell out and become a QVC channel. Even someone commented the other day saying, QVC at your heart out or something like that. And I'm not. And again, it goes back to what I said earlier about the integrity. If I don't believe in something that I'm selling, I wouldn't buy it. If I wouldn't buy something, I won't push it on TikTok. So it's keeping that balance. But yeah, I think more things like that is something that I'll probably look to do in the future. But who knows what the future holds? I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing and just see what happens. Really, I think.
And engaging with other creators, is that something you've considered or do a bit of at the moment? Yeah,
so I'd like to kind of reach out to some creators and do some podcasts with them. But again, it's tricky because they're all kind of American based. So I'll have to do some remote stuff, which is absolutely fine. So yeah, I would like to. I mean, it's really nice actually because there is a good community of creators. So most tech creators follow me and I follow them. There's a few that we don't follow each other, but there's a nice community there. So I could reach out and engage with those people, and I'd like to do more of that for sure. But again, it's just time wise and having that capacity to do it. But yeah, I'd like to speak to more tech creators.
Sure. As someone who's watching this is from like a partner company that might think, oh, I'd like to get more involved with Nick and TA Tech Tips.
Yeah.
Is that something that you're open to doing?
Yeah, if it's right, if it fits well with the channel, if it's something that's a good product or something that I believe in, absolutely. I'd love to expand to do more collaborations with people. I mean, I get messages daily from companies wanting to do work with me, which is amazing. I'm really fortunate. But again, it's picking and choosing the right company and the right content for the channel just to keep that integrity. But yeah, get in touch. Yeah, come and if it's a good product, come and look up with me for sure. I mean, I do a lot of stuff with Samsung. So actually, one company I'll call out is Google. They don't engage with me. They've got so a lot of these big companies have their own PR agencies or kind of look after their products. And Google are the only company that I haven't really.
Come on,
Google, sort yourself out. I'd love to try a pick. I've never tried. I get so many people. So one thing I get is, can you do tips on this phone for me, or can you show this on a range? And I don't have every phone there is possible, so I can't always do that. But I'd love to be able to do some more tips on different handsets for people. And Google is one that I've never had the chance to work with. So if Google are watching, which they won't be, but please,
some AI bot probably is, but
that's it. Please send me a Pixel.
Okay.
So yeah,
brilliant. Well, it's been really delightful to speak to you today, Nick. I mean, the energy and enthusiasm with which you've had this interview with has been like bundles that you show on TikTok every day. So it's great to be able to learn from your experience and see how you've been able to grow the channel and some tips for people and a bit of an insight to what might be coming next.
Yeah.
So thanks for sharing all those things with us.
Oh, thanks for talking to me. I mean, it's been a bit different to what I normally do. I'm a bit bunged up today, so I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. But it's been great. Well, I'm going to talk to you soon. So one of the next podcasts in the future is going to be with Phil. So you'll learn all about you.
I'll sit at that, Mike.
That's it. Yeah. So no, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you.